Hello, friends. Welcome to Akulmek Live. I'm Kanchan Varma, and today in the series of Great Kings of India, we are discussing very important monarch ruler of India who ultimately can be called as enlightened despot of Indian history. So to know about this monarch more, stick around to this episode till the end. It will be very interesting information for you. Hello, friends. Welcome to our show. And today we have Mrs. Binda Paranjpe, who is a professor at Banaras Hindu University. She is one of the prominent historian in India, and her work is being published. And she has also done many research on many historical aspects and topic. So, without wasting any further time, I would like to welcome her. So, welcome to the show, Bindaji. How are you doing today?
Absolutely fine and quite energetic to talk about a great woman of ancient India.
Yes, you know that we have discussed yesterday, and I was so impressed, and I'm so delighted to talk about Rudramma Devi, who has set a precedent of ruling, or maybe a strongness of being a ruler and being a woman. Though you know the ruler or a king is gender neutral, but I think there's something about Rudramma Devi. So, who is this Rudramma Devi?
That's a very interesting thing to say about a woman ruler that though it is a gender neutral term, but it certainly means a lot when we have less number of women in that position. So Rudramma Devi is one of them. And she was a daughter of Ganapati Deva, who was a Kakatiya king. Now, these Kakatiyas are the rulers from the Andhra region, Warangal. Today's Warangal is very famous place in Andhra, and now it is in Telangana. So they were the rulers of that region, and she was married in the Eastern Chalukyan kingdom. She was married to Veerabhadra, the prince of that kingdom, and she ruled as an independent, coronated ruler of the Kakatiyas.
How do we know about this wonderful ruler?
Yeah, in history, it is always very important to know the sources because otherwise it will be just a mythology. So, we are very lucky that we know a good amount of details of her career from her own inscriptions, from her coins. Now, that is very rare. And we also have some literary texts like Pratapacharita or Prataparudra Yashobhushanam. Now, these are the texts which are not contemporary to her times. Like Pratap Charita is much later date, like almost of 17th century. But Prataparudra Yashobhushanam is immediately after her career. So almost we can take it as a contemporary source. And we are very, very, very lucky that we also have a foreign account which tells us about the rule of Rudramma, and that is the famous traveler Marco Polo. Now, this Marco Polo, a European traveler who was traveling throughout Asia during the last decades of 13th century and the beginning of 14th century. And he had a great experience of rulers from various regions of Asia. And then when he says that he had seen this only woman ruler, now that makes it very important for us as a source. So we have got plenty of sources to know about Rudramma Devi.
Well, what is that period of her ruling, or what her period of origin as a ruler until how long she ruled?
Yeah, this is a very, very crucial period in Indian history. And almost the last of the kings who could resist the northerners coming to Deccan and occupying the places of Deccan. So she was ruling in the second half of 13th century. Like there is a slight difference in the exact date that people say about her coronation, but she started her rule sometime around 1259 or so, and we have documented evidence that she was alive till 1295. So almost a period of about 40 years she got. to rule. And that is in the 13th century, second half of 13th century.
Well, it is said either king has to be powerful to create a kingdom or a dynasty, and it is also said that if a dynasty is strong, then that is a foot resting for a ruler, and that ruler can do major things for their people and become a enlightened despot. So let us discuss about the kingdom where Rudramma Devi belong, or dynasty, I mean to say.
Yeah. As I said, that she was daughter of Ganapati Deva, and Ganapati Deva was a very strong and powerful ruler. He had spread his influence in the northern part of Deccan also, and his kingdom reached right up to the south where the Pandyas were ruling from the present Tamil Nadu region. So almost the whole of present Andhra and Telangana region was under their control. They had many feudatories under their control. So it is the directly governed land, and plus many who accepted the supremacy of the Kakatiyas. So it was a huge kingdom that Rudrama Devi inherited from her father.
Well, at this point of time, I would like to, and our viewer also, I like to hear about her achievement. What kind of this powerful ruler she was?
Right. Because Ganpati Deva was still alive, and he appointed her to be the future ruler of the throne. So she had started taking part in the military campaigns even when she was not coronated as the ruler of the throne. But when she became the ruler in full-fledged capacity, she waged many wars. Actually, we are not very sure whether she initiated those out of her uh, ideal of becoming a superior monarch. Probably it was forced on her, because many of the neighboring states, thinking that now there is a woman ruler and Kakatiyas might have become weak, they started invading the Kakatiya territory. And because of that, Rudrama Devi had to wage many wars. So it is not that because of her personal wish to spread the boundaries of her kingdom, but for the protection of her kingdom, she had to undertake a lot of wars. One of the most important one is with the Yadavas, or the Seunas as they are called, from the present Maharashtra region. Devgiri was their capital, which is near present Aurangabad in Maharashtra. And the ruler there, he invaded the Kakatiya territory right up to their capital city. He seized the fort, and Rudrama fought it for a very long time, ultimately causing so much of damage to the uh, soldiers or to the fighting army of the Yadavas. And so the Yadavi king started retreating. Rudrama chased him right up to his capital and forced him to remain in the bounds of his capital. And there she erected an inscription, erected a pillar, victory pillar, and uh, also appointed her own subordinate there as the ruler. So this is one of the biggest achievements that you can say. But see the politics of the contemporary times, and when we are talking about Rudrama Devi in 21st century, when we are looking at the history also from different perspectives. So one of the perspectives that we talk about Rudrama with is the gender perspective. And here I would like to quote that the court chronicler of Yadava king, he didn't want to accept his king's defeat at the hand of a woman. So he writes that Mahadeva did not kill Rudrama because she was a woman. So hiding the fact that it was Rudrama who actually did not kill Mahadeva. But we can understand that how in the contemporary times of 13th centuries, it must have been really very challenging for a woman to face these strong, powerful rulers because of their military might, but also because of the male-dominated society, the patriarchal mindset. Her other achievements you can see on the southern side, like for example, the Pandyas were also very powerful. So they were trying to kind of capture the territories of the Kakatiyas from the southern side. From the present Odisha side, the Gajapatis were trying to come in. So I think most of her career went in fighting the wars and protecting her kingdom. So biggest achievements would be the military achievements.
Well, in our history books, many students, and in fact, I myself have read about Raja Sultana, who was, he was having four brothers, but in spite of that, she was given throne by her father.
By her father.
Yeah, by her father, but she ruled a very small time. We also talk about Jhansi ki Rani. See, but I think somewhere Rudramma is not in the text of the history text of the school. So what I think is that I think we should also teach our students the remarkable military commander was Rudramma, and I think that is that time has come that children should know the nitty gritty of rulers and the great kings of India. Now, I would like to ask you that she was only coronated queen in the early medieval time, or how she was given throne by the father, or how she acquired the throne? How was it?
Yeah, I mean, this is once again something very unique. In fact, we don't have any other parallel of the contemporary times except for Razia Sultana, about whom you already said. Her father declared her to be the future king. Now, that was, think about the situation in early medieval India when the succession of the royal authority ran into the line of men. And Pratap Dev, Ganapati Dev, according to some sources, had two queens, and from one queen he had two daughters, so Rudramma and Ganpati Ma, and there were two other sons also from the other wife. So Rudramma had two stepbrothers also. And it is said that probably his courtiers were asking him to nominate either of those sons to be his successors. But Ganpati Dev said that out of his siblings, children, Rudramma was the best, and she is the most capable to take charge of the kingdom, and she was given the position. As I said, that there is little confusion about the exact date when she was coronated, but it was sure that she was coronated. She took the royal position, and it was either in 1259 or little later in the first decade of 7th century. 1270s, that 70s. So she was coronated. She was given the royal title. She took the title Raya Gajakesari. Now that is very interesting because Raya stands for the king, Raja or Rajan, that's Rai. And Gajakesari is, now these Gajas are actually various enemy kings. And Kesari is the lion. So the lion who creates a terror into the minds of these mighty elephant-like big enemies of the Kakatiyas. So she was a proper ruler, and that is very rare, very rare. We don't have any contemporary example of that stature, such a big kingdom, and a queen taking the official position of being a ruler of that.
Well,
one more evidence that she must have been coronated and as a king, because she minted coins. Because in ancient times, coins usually used to be minted by crown princes or the kings, mainly by the kings, sometimes by the crown princes. So if she has minted the coins, that means she definitely had the full royal authority.
Well, when we talk about rulers, kings, there are two aspects of a good king. One is he has to be a very good general, and he should also have a very good statesmanship in her or his the way of dealing people and dealing other kings. So. How you will rate Rudramma as a general, and did she also done any diplomacy during her time of ruling?
I think, I mean, definitely she must have. And there are some references which give us a hint about that. One is that when her marriage was fixed with Virabhadra, she said that she would first have a combat. And if the king, I mean, the future husband, defeats me in the open combat, then only I'll marry him. And Virabhadra and Rudramma are supposed to have fought for 3 consecutive days. And then Ganapati Deva stepped in and said that both of you are equal to each other. And then that satisfied Rudramma, and then she married. What I mean to say is that in ancient times, and especially when we are talking about the royalties, the marriages are not just the marriages for the two individuals to come for the happy married life. It used to be alliances for the political reasons also. So even as a princess, she was choosing an alliance to her kingdom of a powerful person. Now, that I think is a very good sense of diplomacy that she must have had in her mind, even when she was a princess. And another, we have got descriptions that she used to attend messengers coming from different states and even foreigners in her court. Now, why would these people come to her court unless they have something to take grants from her for their trade, maybe, or negotiations for the treaties, or negotiations for the interstate relations? And obviously, in the full power of being a ruler of the throne, she was dealing with it. Also, we have got references that she used to be very attentive in taking the messages from the secret agents. So the espionage, as we call it, of any state. So that also shows that she must have had very good sense of administration of the state and a diplomatic relation.
So, as you told that she's a very good general and she fought many wars. So, let us discuss little about her wars. What kind of war and what she achieved out of it?
Mostly the wars that we know about, she used to lead. In fact, there is an inscription which tells us about her date, and there is one sculpture where she's actually shown fighting in the full military attire, holding a sword in one hand and holding the reins of the horse in another hand, and she has fought the war. So one thing is there that she fought the wars herself, and at the time of her death, her age must have been something like 80. And that is the time, in fact, people are saying that that must have been the last war that she must have fought. And unfortunately, she lost her life in that. So one can imagine that the wars that she fought were so rigorous from her side. Like, she must have really taken care of each and every planning that goes into the war. We have also talked about the siege that was given to her fort, but how she cleverly managed that and caused lot of destruction to the enemy. One thing I would like to add to your earlier question about the diplomacy, like when she defeated the Yadava ruler, she charged him a huge amount of gold coins as the indemnity for the war. Now, that shows that how intelligently she must have managed her interstate relations and dealing with the kings that she defeated. Anyway, now coming to the war part of it, she had elephants, a very effective cavalry. She herself was a very good horse rider, but also she used to ride elephant. She had good number of soldiers, and she had deployed those units of her fighting forces, like under the headship of somebody who would look after the elephant court, somebody who would look after the chariots, somebody who would look after the cavalry. Chariots, we get very less reference to that, but foot soldiers, of course. Secondly, she paid lot of attention to the building and strengthening of the forts. Now, that also comes under the planning for the wars, like how you plan your defense. And her father had started constructing the Warangal fort, which she extended, enlarged, created a huge moat around the fort, and also constructed a lot of buildings inside the fort. Some historians credit her for the earlier version of the present Golconda fort also. But we do get some inscriptional evidences of some other forts which came under her control, and then she either repaired them or enlarged them or made them strong enough to give resistance to any kind of attack. Also, she was, as we say that she was the ruler, she used to keep a band of personal bodyguards.
Oh,
That
is
is something
great.
very special. And we get inscriptional evidences that they must have been really very important persons, because they are giving donations to the religious institutions and writing their position as being the bodyguards of Rudrama Devi. So that is very significant, that how she was very careful that she has to first protect herself because she is the leader. And so long as the leader is fighting, the morale of the entire army will always be very high and they will be fighting. So she was doing that. Another strategy that she used is that, like as I said, that she enlarged the Warangal fort and there were a lot of bastions. So what she did is that she gave responsibility of one each of the bastion commanders, gave them lands, gave them rent-free holdings, and gave them responsibility of those bastions. Now, that kind of arrangement is very unique. We don't hear of this much. Another strategy, she recruited persons from common walks of life in her army. Somebody has done a research from the available literary and archaeological sources. She only had something like 17% of her army of the nobility, the persons coming from very noble births, very high ranking kshatriyas maybe. Rest of them she picked up on the basis of their fighting skills maybe, and they were trained, very good training was given to them of military. So this is all about her war.
Okay, so now we had been discussing, and it's remarkable. I mean, the way the whole persona has been sketched by you, it is very remarkable for a ruler. But now I'm very impressed, and I want to ask for our viewers, what kind of ruler she was? How you rate her as a ruler?
Yeah, I mean, in ideal of a ruler, we see that the ruler definitely, first and foremost, is protecting the kingdom and the people. That she did to the best of her capacity, and extremely remarkable and very well documented in history. But other than that, looking after the welfare of the people was very important for her. And let's talk about the geographical region that she was ruling. It is an extremely arid region. So extensive tanks were built throughout the Kakatiya period, and many of those works were started during the times of her father, which she completed. She also undertook some such works, excavating tanks, so making arrangement of water. Secondly, she promoted agriculture, and not only whoever were the agriculturalists in her own land, but she also invited maybe more skilled, more knowledgeable people about agriculture from Tamil Nadu, the neighboring state. So there is something like Mutturu Kuppa, one community, which is still there. They identify themselves with that name, which means those 300 families of the agriculturists, the farmers, which she is supposed to have invited and settled them in her kingdom. So, general welfare of the people and supplying for their needs was her priority. Not only that, she promoted the institutions which were responsible for imparting knowledge. So we have got references to Vidya Mandapas, obviously for learning. And mathas, of course, they were the learning centers. So learning not only of Sanskrit, but also of Telugu. So Telugu language was also patronized. She was herself well versed in dance and music because her maternal uncle is supposed to have trained her when she was young. She, in her own capacity, promoted it, and we have got a lot of references. Like there is Rangamandapam, which is in one of the temples of her period, and there she is supposed to have given donations to. We have got like list of it, like 10 singers, 8 percussionists, and one that this reference is very interesting, a Kashmiri singer, and then some dancers, some other female musicians, and a whole orchestra, a band of people who were involved in musical performances that she's supposed to have promoted. There is a system of Devadasis throughout this Kakatiya period, and even Rudrama Devi also promoted those. And these Devadasis were the servants to the temple, and mainly they were the custodians of the dance and music arts, and that she promoted during her times. She respected the knowledgeable persons, and her minister, who actually was also a minister under her father, Shivaramaya, and he supported her. In fact, he is the one who supported the king in declaring Rudrama as the future ruler. So she always took help of his advice, made him minister, continued being under his guidance. So I think, and another, which is again rare, that many rulers, they supported the activity related to medical facilities to be given to the people. Rudrama Devi, it seems, specially made arrangements for the hospitals for women. In fact, the term is somehow translated by the epigraphist as maternity hospitals. Now that is so rare. I mean, it's absolutely rare that she's so concerned about her subjects. And Marco Polo describes it so well. He says that people are so happy, and she had maintained very good system in the ports, because Motupalli was a very important port during that time, and India had trade relations with Southeast Asia and also on the western side coming from the eastern. And all those trade activities continued absolutely without hindrance under the rule of Rudrama Devi. And that is what Marco Polo has described quite vividly, that how all the activities in the port were conducted very smoothly without any disturbance. Now, that assurance to the traders must have promoted a good trading activity during her period.
Well, we talk about Russian despots, we talk about European enlightened despots, but we have Rudrama who has done so much, and I'm really saddened to know that it is not a part of our history school books. I think we should have this ruler should be taught. The achievement should be taught in the school. So at this point of time, I would like to ask you: she did attained or she took any royal titles?
Yeah, as I said, that Raya Gajakesari is a very important title that she took. She was also called Raja. He was also called the King Rudradeva Maharaj. Now, Maharaj is a title which definitely indicates the royal title, and that is usually taken by the male rulers. She is a woman, but she's taking that title. And she used to wear the manly attire also, because I think I can imagine that one who is a warrior she has to be in that attire, like, and give the presence and audience to the subjects, that she's always prompt in taking the sword anytime when it is required. So maybe that is the reason. And she probably did not have her own issue, but I mean, as there is references are not unanimous about it, but either she adopted or she had two daughters, and her daughter's son Pratap Rudra was declared as the successor by Rudramadevi. So taking the lineage from the mother's side, daughter and daughter's son becoming the next ruler is very interesting. And I think that is something again very unique about her.
I mean, she must have assumed total ruler power, royal power while ruling, right?
Yes, she did. And that's how she has become a pride of the present Andhra Pradesh and Telangana people. In fact, it is said that in 1942 there was a film, Deenabandhu, and in which this Shankar Bodhi Sundarachari had written a song that O Mother of Andhra and all that, and people say that that is addressed to Rudramadevi, and that is later on declared as the state song for Andhra Pradesh. And now people are definitely paying lot of attention to her history. They are looking at her as the inspiration for the Telugu people, and I think she will not remain unknown in history anymore. People have really paid good attention to her history and recognized her worth. Maybe it was late, but as we say, better late than never.
Yeah, lately I also seen a very modern film in Telugu.
Yeah.
It is also come, and that time I have been introduced to this character of history. But I also feel that you are saying rightly that in Hyderabad and Telangana they are looking towards a role model and in the persona of Rudramma. But I think it should be celebrated more in other regions of India, because she is so fabulous, she is so marvelous. So let us also discuss little about her personality. What kind of person she was?
She, I think, was a very good combination of a person who could, need be, she could fight. She was very affectionate towards her father. Also, in some sources, we learn that it was very unfortunate that her husband died very early. And it seems that she took a vow that she will never have any other man in her life. So, almost for 40 years after the death of her husband, she still remained completely attached to her husband and dedicated her whole attention then to the service of her subjects. Now, this is something which is very interesting about her personality. She seems to be a very kind person also, because that is what Marco Polo says, that she treats her subjects very kindly. And as we have seen that she has made so much of provision for them, this will only come when somebody has got concern, somebody who really wants to work towards the welfare of the people. So in that sense, we can talk about her personality as being a very duty-bound person and very dedicated person. She was extremely obedient and respectful towards, as I said, that the minister, but initially Guru. And also she learned dance and music, so she must have got some deep appreciation about the classical part of the fine arts, the performing arts. So in all, I think she was quite a enlightened kind of a person. Like, she had her reach in various fields, and all that she could combine very tactfully, and that is why she could rule for 40 years. I mean, otherwise it would not have been possible.
So now, what kind of cultural and literary development happened during her time? Any special achievement during that period of her ruling?
Yeah, because there is one interesting thing that one of the inscriptions mentions that her uh, minister, one of her ministers, he wrote a text of grammar. Now that is very interesting that he was a minister, but he was also a very learned person. And as I have said that Shivaya Araya was there, who was her guru, who was well versed in a lot of texts. Then I talked about the Vidya Mandapas and all that, where the learning activity was taking place. So uh, those achievements, actually what happens is that immediately after her rule, we see in the Prataparudra's time, probably what we see as text in those times are the culminations of the activity that must have started during the time of Rudramma. Secondly, the language which is used in her own inscriptions also shows a very good uh, linguistic standard, very high standard of language. Sculptural representations, like she's shown riding on a lion and having all that military attire and all that. Or the last scene, as I said, probably just before she died, that she's fighting a war sitting on an elephant and all that, sorry, on a horse and all that. So sculptural art definitely developed a lot. Temples were built, beautiful toranas. In fact, the gateways of the Kakatiyas are very, very special, and we also have many of those specimens in the time of constructed during the time of Rudramma. Now, one interesting thing is that it is not necessary that everything that she herself was doing. She probably made her ministers, her subordinates, free to do all these activities, and in fact must have encouraged them to promote. So we don't say that these all were done directly by her, but it is done maybe because of her patronage, because of her support, because of her push to all her subordinates to do it, so that the people will be benefited maximum.
Well, by listening her persona, her achievement, I'm really getting impressed, and I'm very thrilled to know about this personality and the great King of India. Now, I would like to ask you: is enough credit is being given to her in history pages, and what else we can do to really make her aware to young generation?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Certainly, it can be included into the history books, not only of Andhra Pradesh, from the other parts of the country also, because that will give us a wide spectrum of people getting, knowing about her. That is one thing very important. We have seen that somebody tried to make a film, but what happens is that in these kinds of fiction based films, there are certain things which become slightly problematic. So what we can do is like the one what we are doing just now. We are trying to pass on the information which is most reliable, most authentic. Now, whatever we have discussed by way of our dialogue or discussion, that can be serialized or that can be filmed, and then that will attract the younger generation more. We can see that what kind of because descriptions are there that she used to wear clothes like men. So what does it mean? How was that prepared? Or we know that she learned the art of fighting with sword. So we can take some clue from the evidences coming from sculptures. I'll tell you some very interesting thing, that she promoted a very special kind of dance for her soldiers. Now, this is something like a military dance, and that was supposed to be danced before they go for the war. And this is named as Pilai Tandav.
It was like a war cry or something?
No, it's a proper dance, Perini Tandav. And we get descriptions that the soldiers used to dance it before they start going on the war front. So it is something like, we can say, the warm up and bringing that the mood to fight, the you put all your energies together, you focus your mind on that, you start geared up to pick up any kind of weapon which is required and attack. So this is something so unique that she did. And in the contemporary periods, one of the gurus of South Indian dance, he came to know about it, of course, from the texts. So he tried to regenerate that, and for that he took the clue from the sculptures which are there in the Rangamandapam. So and then he kind of choreographed it. And such kind of practices are known from some other part of the world also. And today also we know that war drums are so common. That is to bring that rhythmic force within the fighting soldiers, and then they will be completely focused and geared up for the war. So this is something which I found so interesting when I was reading about her. So to answer your question, that what can we do to make sure that the younger generation knows about her and takes interest in knowing about her, such kind of things we can definitely bring to the notice of the young ones and the younger generation.
Well,
Um,
see what happens. I've heard, and many young people do heard that all these war cries and war song, it was started by Roman military setup. But see, we have a remarkable ruler in India who believe in that, and I am sure that there is no copy of the Roman culture, but she has initiated all this herself only. So now I just want to ask you that very important, what is the impact of her rule to the modern India, and why it is very important to study about her personality, her way of war, or her way of administration, why in modern India?
See, the requirement of the war that was there in the 13th century, obviously it is not there today. But what is there that we can think of is the compilation that was done during her period about something which is classical and something which is folk. Now, today we need to revive that, because if we have to find our roots, how deep they are, how much they are spread, how they were taking the sap from the living culture and developing some very important motifs. So all that needs to be studied, and that is the relevance in the contemporary times of the times of Rudrama Devi that we are talking about. Secondly, as I said, that today we are also learning history from gender perspective. So on one side, yes, we can say that though she was a woman in the biological sense, but what she did was more like men. Like very often we say about Jhansi ki Rani also, the famous Subhadra Kumari Chauhan saying that "Khoob ladi mardani wo Jhansi wali Rani thi." So she was like a mard, she was like a man. Uh, but going beyond this also, let's try to understand that did she have the consciousness of being a woman and something special that she could do? And I think the hospitals that she made for women, or the Devadasis that were promoted for their art and for their preservation of artistic traditions and all that. So such things can be relevant for contemporary history or contemporary times from history. And obviously the uniqueness which is there.
Well, when we talk about genders, I think both the genders complement each other. And when we talk about kings, and I think as you said that there's neutral when we talk about the kings. So, and again, when we are talking about Rudrama, and it is very, very impressive ruler of India, and she should be celebrated on daily basis. I think we should organize any festival to really remember the contribution of Rudrama in the society. Like as you mentioned, there was a maternity hospital she opened for people. So again, any last two sentences you want to add in support or in memory of this great king Rudrama Devi?
Right. So one thing I would say that other than Razia Sultana of that time, and Razia could rule only for 3 years, 6 months, 6 days. And here we have somebody who could rule for 40 years. Now that talks not only of Rudrama Devi. Obviously, she was so great and she had all these, uh, pride in her, the capacity to do it, the decision maker that she was. But other than that, it also talks about our society, that when they saw that the woman is so competent, there must have been people who supported her, and we have examples of that from her own inscriptional evidence also. So I would say that it is not just her personality. We also should talk about the people in Telangana of those times who could accept a woman ruler, supported her, stood by her, fought along with her, and uh, took her now in the present times as a source of pride. And that is something we all should appreciate.
As usual, it is so wonderful to talk to you and know about these great personality, and the way you tell about these great personality is awesome, ma'am. And I'm thankful that you really tell us about the great kings of India. And I'm sure that viewers who are watching this show will benefit out of it. So we'll meet again with some great personality, great kings of India. Till then, bye bye. You take care.
Bye. Thank you.